Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about Microsoft Fabric cost and billing and how you can handle those topics, because you can build the prettiest and most awesome data platforms in the world. However, if you cannot control your costs, you might have unwanted results or even a burning credit card, a CFO that gets mad at you, and all kinds of stuff that you do not want to do. So today we're not going to do a demo on my screen within Microsoft Fabric. Rather, I'm going to walk you through a couple of slides in order to explain the Microsoft costs that you can incur when using Fabric to understand them. So why does it even matter to look at Microsoft Fabric costing? Well, first of all, the way that Fabric is being built is a little bit different than you are used to with paying for most of your Azure services. So if you are used to building data platforms using Azure SQL databases or data warehouse and Azure Data Factory maybe, you're used to a pay-as-you-go billing model where the actual compute that you consume is being built. And with Fabric, that's a bit different. I always relate it to getting a phone plan with a 100 minutes per month of calling that you can get within your plan, and you can upgrade to a 200 minute a month or a 400 minute a month plan. With Fabric, that's roughly the same thing. You buy basically a bucket of compute that you can use for that day or week or month, and if you need to use more compute power, you need to upgrade your plan and have a bigger bucket of compute power. A new way of measuring compute is called capacity units, and capacity units are basically the individual number of compute power that you can buy and use up with queries, with pipelines, notebooks, with semantic models, direct lake, and any other workload that you might use in Microsoft Fabric. It is crucial that you understand this model with the capacity units and the capacity unit seconds in which you use up your compute power, because that will allow you to more accurately budget for upcoming expenses, and it will allow you to control the costs and optimize the costs that you might have across your data platform. And this will give you an advantage in your development of a proper data platform compared to other technologies such as Data Factory, for example. Now, this capacity unit and the capacity unit seconds that we're talking about and that you can read about online, what exactly are those? A capacity unit is the fundamental billing metric within Microsoft Fabric, and it represents an abstract measurement of compute power. So you cannot say this is one CPU core that was busy 100% of the time during 1 minute. It's a little bit more abstract than that. We actually don't really know. Maybe within Microsoft people know, but I certainly do not know what the actual definition of a capacity unit is. Now, capacity units can be bought in what we call Fabric capacities in different SKUs or different tiers. And they all start with the letter F for Fabric, and then they have 2, 4, 8, whatever number of units you can think of, but all in powers of 2, so they double every time. You get 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on, all the way to 2048. All right, so each is doubling the previous capacity, and you buy basically 2 units or 4 units or 8 units linearly corresponding to the number in your SKU. Now, the scaling logic here is fairly simple. If you buy twice as many capacity units, you will get twice as many compute that you can use up. All right, and then this scaling allows you to allocate compute resources across your workloads and to very granularly buy compute power. And now you might say, well, boss, what if I have an F32 and I might be wanting to use 40 units, then I need to bump to an F64. Yes, that's correct. However, maybe you can buy an F32 and then an F8 or an F16 together and divide your workloads across that. So that actually gives you a quite granular approach in order to buy and distribute compute power for your Fabric workloads. Now, for the actual power that you get is the capacity units. So you have 2 capacity units or 4 capacity units or 2048 capacity units if you have a lot of money. But the number of executions or the number of processes or the amount of compute that you can actually use up is measured in capacity unit seconds. So the number of capacity units that you have over time is what gives you capacity unit seconds, and that is the actual compute resources that you can use up with your queries and direct lake and notebooks and all your other workloads within Fabric. This is done by day. Maybe that's the easiest way to think about it, that there is 86,400 seconds in a day. So that means that an F2 capacity with 2 capacity units gives you 2 times 86,400 capacity unit seconds in a day, or 172,800 capacity unit seconds in a day, or CUS. The CUS can be thought of the amount of compute that you're using, and the capacity units can be thought of as the level of compute that you're buying at any moment in time, if that makes sense. So if we draw the analogy to the phone plan again, you have 100 minutes per month that you can call, or 200 minutes or 400 minutes per month. The capacity unit seconds would be the analogy to that, right? So you have a set number of capacity unit seconds in a day that you can use, and that's simply the number of seconds in a day, 86,400, multiplied by the number of capacity units that your SKU comes with. Now, with traditional billing methods such as the Azure SQL database that you might be used to, there is some differences. With a SQL database, for example, or with VMs, or with most other cloud resources, you will buy a set number of compute power, and you will pay for that by the hour or day or month or whatever the billing cycle is there. And you will have a set number of hardware, of compute power that you can get. So let's make the simplest comparison to a SQL database within Azure. In the DTU deployment model, you might have a 100 DTU database, and then you have a large data set and a very complicated query that you run against that 100 DTU database. And then maybe the query takes 100% of the resources of that database for 10 minutes, and then the query is successfully executed. Now you could increase the power, the compute power of your database to 200 DTUs, and then probably your query will execute in 5 minutes and will be done with it. It will use 5 minutes of 200 DTUs or 10 minutes of 100 DTUs, right? Given that other things are equal, that there is no other workloads running on that database and so on. With Fabric, that is a bit different. Your workload can exceed your capacity units that you actually buy. So let's say you are buying a very cheap, low-end SKU, you buy an F2 Fabric tier with only 2 capacity units, you can run a query that easily consumes maybe 5 capacity units, right? We call this bursting. You can burst out of the capacity units that you have, but what's happening is you're borrowing capacity unit seconds from your future allowance. All right, so you have these 2 times 86,400 capacity unit seconds in your day. If you're using up now maybe 10 seconds of 5 units, that's 50 capacity unit seconds that you're using up against your allowance for the next day. This is actually a quite cool concept of Fabric billing, is that you can start allocating your compute resource. You can start buying your Fabric capacities on the average consumption that you are expecting, instead of on peak consumption that you're expecting. Now, how can you actually buy and pay for your Fabric capacities? There's 2 options. You can have a pay-as-you-go model, or you can have a reservation or reserved instance model. And let's first look at the pay-as-you-go model. The pay-as-you-go model is the most flexible option that you can have, and is built for by the second, I guess, or maybe the minute, at least a very granular approach to billing. And you basically buy a capacity, an F2 or an F8 or an F64 or whatever F tier that you buy, and you buy those at will. So you can create them, you can pause them, you can delete them anytime you'd like. And you will pay an hourly rate of approximately 21 cents in euros, so 0.21 euros per capacity unit per hour if you go with the pay-as-you-go model. Now, mind you, in different currencies and in different Azure regions, the pricing might be different. So check your Azure pricing calculator in order to find the exact Fabric pricing that you get. For me, in Western Europe, paying in euros, I will pay approximately 0.21 euros per hour per capacity unit. All right. So an F2 will cost me 42 cents. An F64 will cost me 13.5 euros per hour that I use it. Now, if you extrapolate that to a monthly cost, that pay-as-you-go for the smallest tier that I can buy, the monthly cost for an F2 will be about 310 euros. For an F64, it will be almost 10,000 euros. All right, so that will scale linearly, but you can scale up, scale down, pause at will, and so on. You're charged per second, but with a 1 minute minimum. So that means if you start putting it on and off and on and off and on and off, you will rack up a lot of minutes of billing that you will get. But usually that's fine. Usually you have your capacities activated for a lot more than just 1 minute, and the billing goes by the second. So that's actually quite cool. And you will get the highest usage built per billing period. I would argue that if you start building a data platform, the data platform has an expected life of more than a month, of more than an hour, of more than a year probably. If we look at research and also look at our customers, then we see that the average life expectancy of a modern data platform like we built with Microsoft Fabric is 5 to 7 years. And that means that if we can give any kind of commitment to Microsoft in return for a discount, that might be a wise thing to do. Because after all, if we know how many compute power we need, and we know that we're going to use that compute power for a longer period of time, then I'm happy to take that discount any day of the week, right? And luckily, Microsoft gives us the option to buy reserved instances of Microsoft Fabric capacity units. And what you will do basically is you will prepay for a 12-month usage of your capacity units, and in return for that you get a 40% discount. So if you know that you are using at least an F8 capacity with 8 capacity units for the next year, then you could say, okay, I buy the F8, which would probably be around 1,200 euros, but rather than paying the 1,200, I go for the 40% discount if I pay for a year upfront by giving a reserved instance. Now, mind you, there is 100% feature parity, so actually there is no difference between the capacity units you get with pay-as-you-go and a reserved instance. It is just that the billing method has been changed from pay-as-you-go to an upfront reservation payment. On a previous slide, we already spoke briefly about bursting, right? When we compared the traditional Azure model of allocating resources to the Fabric model of allocating compute power or compute power allowance, basically. We already mentioned bursting. So I can have an F2 or an F4 or any F tier capacity that gives me a set number of capacity units. And then any workload, any query or notebook that I run could temporarily use up more resources, more capacity units than I actually have. So basically what I can do is I can burst out of the number of compute resources, the number of capacity units that I have allocated to my Fabric environment. Right, so let's say I buy an F2. If I run a notebook that consumes 10 capacity units and I do that for 30 minutes, then I'm basically using up 30 minutes times 10 capacity units is 300 capacity unit minutes, and then times 60 for the actual capacity unit seconds in order to do the billing calculation. That's what I'm actually using up against my allowance that I have for the F2 capacity, the 172,000 or something like that. So I'm actually borrowing from my future capacity allowance. All right, if that makes sense. So I can burst out of it, but then in the next 24 hours, I will be repaying for that by having some background activity on my capacity. For background workloads, as I mentioned, this is 24 hours. For interactive workloads on reports, mainly on Power BI reports with Direct Lake, this is a 10-minute smoothing. And that means that you can smooth out your usage over a longer period of time, allowing you to buy a smaller capacity that is spec'd on average usage over a day instead of peak usage on a day. Now, you might want to know how you can actually monitor and optimize your costs. The first thing is you should start tracking your costs, right? We are BI consultants and we say if you do not measure anything, you will not be able to improve anything. So just like we do with our customers, we need to do with our data platforms, right? We need to start tracking our metrics. And luckily, Microsoft has given us the Fabric Capacity Metrics app, which is actually a Power BI report that shows you exactly per capacity, per workspace, and even per item, how many capacity unit seconds you are using up. So you can use that in order to very granularly check the level of compute power that your different workloads are using. If you do not look at that, do not look at anything else for cost optimization, because the Capacity Metrics app is actually where you should be starting. From there, you will find that there is more cost-effective or cost-ineffective tools that we can use for different workloads in Fabric. For example, a PySpark notebook might be more cost-effective to do an extraction from an API than a Dataflow Gen 2 might be. Even if you have a reserved instance, you can still scale up a little bit. You can scale down, but that won't save you any money because you already prepaid for the reserved instance. But the third optimization that you can do here is to strategically scale up. If, for example, your Mondays are very busy or the first 3 days of the month are very busy, then you could allocate more resources for those days. You can find those busy days using the Capacity Metrics app. So again, start monitoring your actual usage so that you can improve on it. And then optimize your data processing, of course, because if you're doing full loads every time, every day, or every hour. That will take a lot of resources. If you can start doing incremental loads, for example, or doing less frequent loads if you don't need those in your reporting, then that will save you some compute as well. So the key takeaways for today's video were that you need to understand your capacity units. If you know how capacity units are allocated and are built, including bursting and smoothing, that will allow you to understand how you can control the costs that you incur with your Microsoft Fabric environment. You should monitor the usage of your different components within Fabric using the Capacity Metrics app, and then you will choose wisely between the pay-as-you-go flexibility and the more rigid but cheaper reservations or reserved instances that you can buy in order to save money on capacities. Thank you for watching this video. If you learned anything, that's super cool. That's why I make these videos. And if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. I will publish videos like these every week, and see you next time.